Joining us here today on the SEC Unfiltered platform featured by Mach 10 Sports is the new voice of the Crimson Tide. A guy that I've looked up to for a long time now is Chris Stewart joining us. Chris, appreciate you joining the show, man. I know it's been a wild week for you. You're probably sure. I was listening to some interview. I forget, it was the process show y'all do on Disrupt Media. I mean, you were saying you had 600 text messages. I'm sure it ultimately got higher than that. Man, what has the last week been like for you?
Crazy, but it's Dave, been incredibly exciting, surreal, enjoyable. This is a job of a lifetime for me, and I've been so fortunate to be a part of the network for so long, having done this, of being a part of it in one capacity or another since 1998. Been on baseball broadcast starting with David Crane 24 years ago. Started doing the basketball play-by-play. This is my 22nd season when I followed Eli at that time. So to have done all that I've done with the network, but to have now the opportunity to do the radio play-by-play full-time for Alabama football. And I say that because 2 years ago, I filled in for Eli. It was his job. I was a fill-in when he was sick, just as he and others had filled in for me when I was out with my bypass and first my stroke 6 years ago, and then the bypass and the infection that had me in the hospital for 3 months. And he and others were so kind in filling in for me and doing that for me while I was unable to. Got to repay the favor to him 2 years ago when he was out sick. Last year when Learfield and Alabama Athletics said that you're one of the two announcers, which gave me that opportunity last year to feel like it's mine, at least for a certain number of games. And they made it clear that's what it was. It was my job, as it was Eli's, but we were given different roles on different games. So to have it exclusively now or full-time and to be the one voice, I guess you'd say, is something that's very, very special.
That's awesome. I'm fired up for you again. I mean, I'm sure it's been because you're a Montevallo grad, and so that I'm sure that has to be like you never thought in your wildest dreams, not because of your ability or anything, that you would be the voice of, if not the best athletics program, a top athletics program, top 5 in the country. You're the voice of that entire athletics department. That's got to be something, a childhood dream. You're like, man, I never would imagine that.
It's truly, Dave, as you said, a childhood dream. I used to, I have friends that I used to pretend I was a broadcaster and pretend that I was Coward Hosell, because I thought as a 4 or 5 year old, that's what Howard Cosell's name was Coward Hosell. I was too young and didn't understand. But I have so many friends that have known me for so long, parents of friends and friends themselves that go, you talked about this when you were a kid. You said you were going to be the voice of the Crimson Tide as a kid. Listening to John Forney as a little boy, listening to Paul Kennedy as a teenager, then getting to know John. And I say that still, I hesitate to say John because I think of him as Mr. Forney, but he insisted that I call him John. So I do, and so honored to have gotten to know him and even talk to him literally the day that he died was something that I cherish to this day and always will. Paul Kennedy, having been a friend, become a friend, and somebody that I've leaned on quite a bit about this job and about the profession, and so honored that I would get a call from him like I did recently as yesterday. Spent a half hour or more on the phone with Paul about this. Having listened to Eli as a kid on Birmingham Bulls hockey in the old WHA, and then Barons baseball, and then watching him on the back then the ABC affiliate in Birmingham when he was sports director at Channel 6, and then listening to him in my late teen and throughout my adult life, and then having the privilege of literally sitting shoulder to shoulder with him to work on some Alabama football broadcast, in addition to, before that being the sideline guy with him. It's a very meaningful opportunity. Professionally, Dave, as you talked about, it's one of the top 5 easily, regardless of what conversation you want to have in college athletics. It's easily one of the top 5. But to have been a fan since childhood of the Tide and listening to those guys, and then on a personal note, getting to be in that spot and follow men that I've known and respected my entire life. It is quite an honor. It's quite an opportunity. It's one I don't take. It's a responsibility that I don't take lightly, but it's an opportunity that I'm extremely grateful for.
Well, again, I'm happy for you, and I know I don't want to speak for the entire fan base, but obviously everybody I know is fired up, man. Everybody loves you being the voice of baseball, obviously basketball over the years since 2003. Was it 2002? I remember what game. I just always.
Yeah, it was 2002. It was Alabama, Oklahoma,
the Garden,
Madison Square Garden. My first time to ever be in New York, and I sit down at the Garden as the voice of Bama basketball. So it was unreal. It really was.
Chris, this is one of my questions too, but since we're going to talk about, I was just going to bring it up here. Are you still going to take on the baseball play-by-play stuff, or is that still kind of being worked out?
It had already been decided before this was announced, like back months ago. I asked to come off of baseball on radio. I love it. It had absolutely nothing to do with Rob Vaughn becoming the coach. In fact, I had a visit with him to make sure he understood that my stepping aside from that after 24 years had nothing to do with him. If anything, it made it tougher because I have so much respect and excitement for him and clearly you can see with the start they've gotten off to why we'd have that excitement. He's going to do phenomenal things and probably going to go to Omaha really soon, and I'll miss that. But and I will get a chance to still do games. I've already done a couple on SEC Plus, the streaming platform, and I will do more. I think I've got another 10, 15 that'll be on the schedule still to be worked out. But I will be around it. I'll be a part of it, just not on the radio side. 2 things there. One, first and foremost, I wanted the additional time at home. I've got a 12, soon to be 13-year-old that's a golfer, that I enjoy the time with him. I want to be around and follow him. This is my last go around. I've got a 23-year-old daughter who's graduated college. I've got a soon to be 19-year-old that's in his freshman year at Alabama. Anybody that's been a parent, they know when the last one comes around, you go, man, I better enjoy this. And so that's what I'm trying to do with him. But the other piece of that is Roger Hoover's been a great teammate and has earned the opportunity to have his own sport to truly be the voice of, in addition to the women's basketball that he's done for a long time. He's a really good baseball announcer. I know how much it means to him. And so it's a great time to step aside and let him have the baseball and take the lead role on that, just as happened when David Crane moved and took over as the lead voice at UAB. I got that opportunity with baseball at Alabama, I guess 16 years ago now, and took that role on in addition to the men's basketball job that I had. And so with alumni appearances, Red Elephant clubs, other things that are asked of me, plus the chance to do baseball but strictly at home and not have to be away for as many as 4 nights for certain trips or more, it was a great opportunity, great time to be able to step aside. And it just so happened that the football full-time thing came along after that decision had already been made.
And obviously, you're going to stick with basketball. I mean, everybody knows the voice of the Alabama Crimson Tide basketball is Chris Stewart. So transitioning to basketball here, Chris.
Yeah.
From where you sit, obviously you're sitting on you and Brian Pasek every game are sitting right there. Comparing this Alabama team who's tied with Tennessee for first place in the SEC with 4 games left. Again, in my opinion, I think it's going to come down to, you tell me if I'm wrong, Alabama, Tennessee, or Auburn, especially Auburn, Tennessee is a big one. I've heard you talk about on the radio. This is a massive one for Alabama tomorrow night in Oxford.
There's no doubt.
Have it.
Yeah.
You got to have it. What is kind of, I mean, obviously, I know there's some obviously differences. There's no Brandon Miller, but if there was something you think this team has, the 23-24 team that's currently in first place, has that could benefit them for a deep tournament run that the team last year didn't have, what would you say that is? What would you lean on from that perspective?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind, and I will say the only advantage that this team has over that one, is that they don't have the incredibly unfair microscope on them or spotlight on them that last year's team had on them. That was so unfair. I'm amazed they did what they did with the pressure those guys were under. That was not fair at all. And I'm done talking about that, other than to say that in comparison.
Yeah.
What
absolutely.
This team doesn't have that team did is the ability to lock you down on the defensive end. As explosive and dynamic as Brandon was offensively, he's a great defender.
Yeah.
Noah Clowney, great defender. And they were better on that end. That team was better on that end than this one has been on a consistent basis. This team is athletic enough, talented enough, deep enough, I think, to be there. I think they can still get there defensively. But they've got to do it night in and night out, because we've seen the nights they don't bring that, they can not only get beat, they can get embarrassed. They've only got 3 losses in league play, but it's by a combined 60 points. They have got to be locked in against great teams, or on a night that other teams are great. They've got to be locked in defensively, because the offense is going to be there. I mean, we saw it Saturday in Lexington. They got boat raced, and yet still almost scored 100 points.
Still scored 95.
You give up 117 though, you're not going to beat anybody. Yeah. So it was disappointing, but I will be surprised if they don't come back and respond very well. I know everybody's talking about Saturday in Tennessee, and that's great. You're going to have game day there for the first time for men's basketball. It's I think the first time a school has had football and basketball game day on campus in the same year. It's going to be special. It really is. But it will not have the same meaning if you don't take care of business against Ole Miss. Now, here's the luxury. If you lose that game in Oxford and do find a way to beat Tennessee, now you're back in a tie with them, and you went out, you're going to be no worse than tied for first. But you eliminate any margin for error if you lose this game to Ole Miss, because even if you beat Tennessee, you automatically lose the tiebreaker. You would have 2 losses to them. They went out. They're going to be the league champion. They'll be the top seed, and there's a lot to be said, for being that top seed, getting that early game on Friday so that you can be a little more rested on Saturday and Sunday than if you play a later game on Friday and then were to win and play on Saturday. But they don't need anything to rattle their confidence right now. They need to bounce back as they did the last 2 times they had losses. Play well, get the win, move into that matchup with Tennessee, and go relax, go have fun, go play at the level they're capable of. It'll be an unbelievable atmosphere, but it'll be amped up even more if Bama can get that win in Oxford on Wednesday.
Chris, I'm glad you brought that up. You teed me up for our next 2 questions here. Just bluntly, do you think 14-4 wins the league this year for anybody in Alabama?
I think it's got a very good chance to be a share of it. I think 3 losses and you win it outright. But if you are if you're there with 4 losses, then I think there's a very good chance that there will be a tie for the league. I should know, but I've forgotten who Tennessee has left besides Auburn.
They probably have the toughest slate. They still got South Carolina and Kentucky plus Auburn and Bama.
Well, good. You've made me feel slightly better about 4 losses.
Auburn's the one with the easier path a little bit. And if they don't lose tomorrow, they're like, they still got Georgia, Missouri, State at home. And I think that's it, where it's like tomorrow, Auburn will be favored in every game left after tomorrow.
So remind me, Auburn's got 4 losses, right?
Auburn's got 4. They're a game back at Tennessee and Alabama.
Right. So if you're sitting there looking at a 3-way tie, I know this. If Bama wants to have a part of it, I don't see how they can have more than 4 losses because of what you just mentioned with Auburn. I don't think if Auburn beats Tennessee, I don't think they lose again. So I don't think you can be there at 5. And look, you've got Ole Miss on the road, which has been a very good team at Oxford. You've got obviously Tennessee at home. Then you got Florida in Gainesville. And I know what Arkansas's record is, but you know good and well that they will want to come in and have the chance to play spoiler and factor into the SEC race in terms of wrecking it for somebody, especially Alabama, even if they've got no shot of factoring it in. And Arkansas's, not won the league since Eric Musselman's been there. So spoiler is the best they can opt to do right now.
Yeah, Arkansas, like you said, they're riding a little momentum. There's some air back in the tires there from us, but they're back on the road. Yeah. They're off the road. They're getting a little better. But before we wrap up, just last few questions here for you, Chris, before we get to football real fast. If I were to tell you, thinking about this when they hired Nate Oates, let's just say Alabama does win the SEC this year. If I were to tell you 5-6 years ago that Nate Oates, when they hired him, would win the SEC regular season 3 of the last 4 years, and let's just say Alabama gets a 3 seed this year. So, and you go back and average I think I was looking at it, average the seeds of the last 4 years, they would have averaged a 3 seed. So you're winning the SEC 3 of the last 4 years. You're averaging in a 4-year span a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. Are you kind of like, there's no way? Right? Just the consistency of the program, he's putting that in on a year-to-year basis now.
Dave, there's no doubt he's exceeded expectations, but I'm going to break this up 2 different ways. Take this year out of the equation first. And think about what he's done in 4 years, winning 2 SEC regular season and tournament titles.
Correct.
It's difficult to win the regular season, extremely difficult. But then to go into the league tournament with everybody gunning for you because you are the regular season champion, and to still manage to win the tournament title both of those years, that's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So the double-double twice in 3 years. Amazing. But now let's just take this year and look at it on its own. 9 new players, only 3 scholarship returnees at the start of the year. He took a walk-on in Kai Spears and made him a scholarship player after Christmas. But in terms of coming into the year, true scholarship guys, 3. 9 new players added to that. By the way, your coaching staff, all 3 guys, Brian Hodgson, Charlie Henry, Antoine Petway, had been a part of your staff 4 years in building what you built at Alabama. They're all gone to Division I head coaching jobs. All 3 gone. He said, I had to hire people just to have somebody to talk to around the office, because not only do those 3 guys leave, but they take lower level staff people with them who get a chance to move up professionally into different roles. So I'm not going to say it was a completely empty office, but it was a mostly empty office. He had a ton. He had to go hire assistants while he's still recruiting and then get them to help go and get those pieces that would give them a full roster this year. And to be here with 4 games left, tied for the league lead, look, we all want the ring. We all understand that's the goal. It's not what you've done to this point that everybody will remember you for. But in the moment, it shouldn't be lost on what he's done just to get them in contention. They were picked 5th in the preseason. The ironic thing is, this is the 3rd time they've been picked 5th in the preseason. He won the league championship each of the last 2 times. And he said going into the year, hey, the last 2 times they picked us 5th, we won it. This is a pretty good spot to be in. And dadgummit, they're not right there with a chance to win it all again if they could find a way to win at least 3 and probably 4 of these games that are left.
No, you're right. I remember him saying that at SEC Media Days. But you're right. I think that's something nationally no one really talks about. I saw someone, I forget who it was with Mick. He, under the radar, should probably be up for National Coach of the Year if you factor
There's no doubt. And he's on the list. I mean, he's on the short list for that. And he absolutely deserves it. It's amazing what he's done.
Chris, transition to football. 2 more questions again before we get you out of here. How weird was it for you the other day? What game was it? Was it? I think it was the Texas A&M game. I heard you say coming into the building is the former head football coach of the University of Alabama, Nick Saban. Yeah. How weird is that for you to say after the last 17 years of him manning the fort there?
Let me be clear. I'm really excited about what Alabama football will look like under Kalen DeBoer. I think Greg Byrne made a phenomenal hire, a great choice. The man's record speaks for itself. If you were there, especially, but if you watched the press conference where he was introduced, the guy fits, and the guy is going to be great. That being said, and to your point, man, you pay attention more than I do on this stuff. But I do remember saying when we looked on the baseline, and I was actually going to reference Herb Jones and Noah Clowney being at that particular ball game. I've forgotten who it was, but I said, and by the way, in sitting in front of them, and this is the first time I've ever said it, and I'm going to probably get a little choked up on this one, but also in attendance, the now former head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide, Nick Saban. It's very surreal to think of him in the past tense. And there were a lot of us, both media members, athletic department staff, and boosters and donors to the program that I had conversations with. And we said, really, really do like the DeBoers. And the melancholy mood that we're in has nothing to do with them or how we feel about them coming into the program. But it was so surreal for me to be standing at that podium to start the press conference and for me to look down in front and see probably the greatest college football of all time, Nick Saban sitting there as a spectator rather than a participant in that. There are so many things that I had done in that building in that very same spot. I've emceed the Nick's Kids, which is his charity luncheon, many, many times over the years. I've introduced him for so many other events and so fortunate and privileged to do that. But I got to visit with him for about 10 or 15 minutes before all that took place. He was so relaxed. He looked so at peace. He was as laid back as I've ever encountered him to be. And I was happy for him, but it's sad to see that era and that run come to a close. And it made me wish, although it has nothing to do with his era, because 8 national championships as opposed to 7 isn't going to change the narrative, but it would have been just perfect for him to go out with one more national championship. And sadly, it was about a minute away from taking place because, again, with all due respect to the guy who's now in the chair, we'd have beaten Washington. Just like I think so in my heart, just like Michigan did. But just amazed that as a child I got a chance to witness the last, 12 years of Bear Bryant's run at the University of Alabama, and as a professional having a chance to witness from a front row seat a run that at least historically matches, if not exceeds, what Coach Bryant did.
And you brought up Kalen DeBoer, and that'll lead me to my last question for you here, Chris. What has kind of been your interactions? I don't know how many you've had with him. What are just some initial thoughts from Kalen DeBoer a little bit? I saw the next round crew is going to be at the Mount Moore facility yesterday. I feel like you never saw that under Coach Saban. So it's like It's going to be a little bit different, probably a little bit more open to media, no right or wrong. But I just want to know your initial thoughts, your initial interactions with Coach DeBoer.
Minimal so far, just to be candid. There was kind of a holding area. It was really the recruiting room is where I was asked to be at about 12:30 or so before the press conference began at 1. And when I went there, Dr. Stewart Bell, the university president, his wife Susan, were there. We had only talked for less than 5 minutes when Coach Saban and Miss Terry came in and visited with him for about 10 or 15 minutes. And then we look up, and here comes Coach DeBoer, his wife, and people that had been with him, including Greg and Regina Byrne. And Greg introduced me to him, and there was not more than a 30-second interaction with him. There was so much going on. Shook his hand on the podium. He came by, and I understand he was only being courteous to shake my hand as he was going to Dr. Bell and then to the Chancellor, Finest St. John. But he did. He shook my hand then, and then I shook hands with he and his wife once it was all over with. That's it. That's all the interaction I've had. I know we're going to have a lot of time probably on the road at Red Elephant Club meetings or alumni events or other appearances that will be coming in the months ahead. Once the initial work of putting everything in place, I'll be available whenever he needs me. I'm not going to be around to be in the way any more than I was with Coach Saban. I will, when summoned, I will arrive. Otherwise, I will be out of the way until I'm needed. But I'm excited about the opportunity that I have professionally to work with him, and I'm excited to see, as a fan, what Alabama football will be with him continuing the legacy of Coach Saban and others before Coach arrived in Tuscaloosa.
Well, Chris, I appreciate you joining us, man. I know it's been a big week for you, an exciting week, but I'm sure a hectic week as the new voice of the Crimson Tide, not only for basketball, but obviously football now. Man, I appreciate you joining us again. We'd love to have you back anytime.
Yeah,
I appreciate
Dave.
you taking some time out of your Tuesday morning to join us.
Yeah, I'm glad to do it. You do a great job with this, Dave. It's fun to talk to you. So I appreciate you having me, and we'll do it anytime. Just let me know.
Appreciate you saying that.
Take care.